Well, we've just completed another exciting episode of TriMet board meeting. You know, I've been watching these board meetings long enough to know that don't expect anything out of that board. The only reason the board exists is to justify whoever the general manager happens to be at that time. Currently, Neil McFarlane. Who Neil McFarlane gets his marching orders from, we're not sure, but he does run his personnel service his way, as we know from his hiring of all of his old cronies. Anyway, the one thing I was interested in today at the board meeting was how are they going to explain away the the fine, that the judge gave them. And what we get here is a very predictable response out of McFarlane and out of his crony Toran. It's you got to remember who you're dealing with here with these people that never take responsibility for anything. They're never wrong. It's always somebody else's fault. These are general rules in dealing with TriMet executives. There's always somebody else to blame. It's never themselves. And what you're going to see here is another example of that. So without further delay, let's watch what they have to say.
So Janet ran the legal discovery issue that was identified in the paper, and this was actually associated with a liability case that has been filed and actually will go to trial shortly. So there's not a lot that we want to say about it, but I would just come to the board and say that we have complied weeks ago, actually, with the judge's order associated with producing documents, and indeed some of the details associated with the production of that order, those documents did change over time. And we have fully complied and satisfied the judge at this point in time in terms of the documents that he wanted to see associated with that trial. But I'm certainly not the expert in that, but there is one sitting to my left and would offer the opportunity for any questions that you have on that.
Right. I don't really have a lot to add to that, but I do want to point out that from the very beginning of this case, that TriMet accepted liability for the actions of the negligence of the operator, and that we have always been willing to meet our legal obligations in the case. So there's never been a question about that. And we provided 30,000 pages of records, and the court did require us to conduct another search, and that resulted in 600 pages. So we're talking about 2% of all the records that we produced in the second go-around, and only 2 of those documents were used by the plaintiff in the case. So it's not that TriMet is at all trying to avoid producing records, but I will say that we do not really have the capacity to do electronic searches, and we told the judge that we didn't have that capacity and that it would take us 34 days to do the search that the plaintiffs requested. The court relieved us of that obligation. So if you have any questions about the process, I'm happy to answer that, but I will say that we have complied with all legal requirements.
Well, there you have it, folks. Janet Toran. It was only 2 files they used, and we didn't have the capacity to do an electronic search, which is obviously bullshit, and we accepted responsibility, la-di-da-di-da-di-da. You know, as usual, you get the same excuses, the same we didn't do anything wrong, the same we try to cooperate. It's always the same story with these people over and over and over and over again.